I grew up in a military family, and we were stationed overseas when I was about 9 or 10 years old. We weren't stationed in France, but my mom and I went on a big trip with a bunch of our friends to Paris over winter break. We were only supposed to spend 5 days there. The first few days went fine and we all had a great time. But on one of the last days, all the moms got emailed that our flight back was cancelled due to snowstorms. We spent an entire afternoon hanging out in the Starbucks under the Louvre. We were trying to figure out travel plans to get back to the other European country where we were all living. When the airlines rescheduled our flights, the several families were put on different flights over the next 3 days. However, they scheduled me and my mom for different flights on different days. A 9-year-old traveling alone wasn't going to work, so we took the next flight they had available for both of us, which was on a 4th day, after everyone else. Our hotel room had bookings for after we left, so my mom and I had to find another place to stay for the extra nights. It didn't seem like a big deal at first. However, when it came time for us to take a taxi to our next hotel room, us being the only family from that trip left in Paris, the taxi driver gave us a weird look and realized where he was taking us. Then he gave us a warning: do not go out at night. I may have been 9, but I knew enough to know that that meant bad people and danger. I don't remember my mom's reaction, but I'm sure it wasn't good. We got to the hotel and it was nothing like the pictures they had on their website. Those pictures were definitely stolen from a much nicer hotel, but my mom had already paid and it was only for 2 nights. We were sure not to stay out too late and we had no issues on the first night. The last day went fine. We went up to a basilica and hung around there for most of the day. When evening came, we made sure to get back to the hotel room early. That's when bad things started to happen. When darkness fell, we started to hear a lot of people in the hotel lobby. We were only on the 1st floor and basically right above the lobby. At first, we just turned on the French TV and tried to ignore it. Then there were pounding footsteps up the stairs and a man angrily shouting in French. My mom definitely jumped at that and we both had an uneasy feeling. Then, the angry French man started pounding on our door. We didn't speak French, and most of what he was saying was slurred. I only caught things like, "We know you're in there, and we know you have them." I, being 9 years old, had no idea what they were talking about, but obviously my mom and I were terrified. She told me quietly not to make any sounds. Whatever state the TV was in, we kept it that way to make it seem like the room was empty. The banging on the door just kept going, and the shouting didn't stop. My mom called my dad, who was in our host country. We got him to call the French police as he spoke some French, but he couldn't get through. We were on our own. Me, being 9 years old, late at night on a long trip, somehow managed to get to sleep because I was so tired. At some point in the night, I was woken up by the door cracking. The angry Frenchman just kept going as he tried to break down our room door. Somehow, the door didn't give though, and eventually at some point in the early morning he left it alone. We left as soon as possible and went to the airport for the rest of the morning. It took years of telling this crazy story for my mom to tell me the hotel was probably selling and doing drugs down below us, which is why none of the staff responded. They were all too high to do anything. The angry Frenchman was probably so high that he was imagining someone else was hiding in our room, or there were drugs in there stashed that we didn't know about. I have no idea how that door didn't break, but I'm so glad that it didn't. This happened in December of 2011 while I was on winter break from college. I grew up in rural Texas with about 1,000 people in my hometown. Shortly after my parents' divorce, I moved to a large city for college and made it a tradition every year to come visit my family for the holidays. After the divorce, my mom had just recently moved to a nearby town of around 100 people. Her home was located on the very outskirts of town, surrounded by miles of cornfields almost every direction. The only neighbor she had was about a half-mile north of her house, who was a truck driver and was basically never home throughout the year. Needless to say, it was pretty secluded and pretty much the only thing close to civilization was about 15 to 20 miles away. This particular winter break was different. My mom and brother were traveling to Boston to visit my grandparents, and my mom needed someone to dog sit while she was away. I volunteered to be the dog sitter. After a few days of having the house to myself in the middle of nowhere, I was particularly bored. I decided to put a harness on the dog and take a walk around the area in no particular direction. We ended up following a dead-end road and turned around because it was getting darker and the wind was starting to pick up. By this time I was becoming slightly frustrated. I could smell the rain and my dog was being stubborn. Eventually I got him to start moving. We started walking back, but at this point it was colder and starting to drizzle. We picked up the pace. We were almost jogging when suddenly my dog stopped abruptly. I initially thought he had caught on to a scent and couldn't let it go until he went directly up to it. But then he started barking as if he saw someone in the cornfields. I picked him up and we ran back home. We were both pretty damp and cold by this point. I dried up and took a bath. I made something to eat and then me and my dog started to wind down for the night. It was still very windy outside, but it never turned into a storm. We went into the bedroom and my dog and I burrowed underneath the covers. Shortly after, I passed out. Several hours later, I woke up to my dog, awake and growling in my bed in the direction of the window. I heard rustling outside and thought it was likely just a small animal. I was kind of drowsy, but I got out of bed, picked up my dog, and took him to the living room. I turned on the TV to drown out the rustling noises. My dog burrowed underneath the blankets again. I was just about to fall asleep when I heard a thud outside. My dog was now wide awake and was barking and growling. I was starting to get kind of annoyed. I thought it was still just small animals outside. I turned up the TV to hopefully drown out the rustling outside once again. 25 minutes later, at 1:30 a.m., I heard a knock on the back door. All hell broke loose with my dog, and he tried to jump off the couch and dash to the door. I caught him last minute and just held him in place while we were both freaking out. I really don't remember what happened next. I think I may have blacked out. But when I came to, there were no more rustling sounds and my dog had calmed down. I began to doze off again, when 30 minutes later, there was another knock, at the front door this time. I could feel my heart beating in my chest. I grabbed the landline and called 911. My dog ran to the door, barking furiously. The phone reached the 911 emergency service of a town that was 15 to 20 miles away. I told them everything that was happening while my dog was freaking out. The police said they were on their way, but it was going to take them some time to get to my house. I stayed online with the dispatcher, and things started to calm down again. I basically stated that I was pretty sure I had it from here until the police arrived. I hung up and very carefully looked out the side window. There was a man there, standing directly in front of the door. No movement from him at all, just a blank stare. I grabbed some mace and picked up my dog. I stated very loudly that the police were on their way. He didn't reply. I was thinking the guy was on drugs at this point. I opened the front door. There was a second screen door that was locked, so opening one door didn't pose any danger. I looked into his face and basically just asked him what he wanted. I told him that the police were about to be here. He just stared blankly. There was a silence for what might have been the longest 20 seconds of my life. Then he slowly opened his mouth and asked, "Do you want to play a game with me?" I immediately shut the door and ran to my bedroom. I watched him on my porch for about 5 minutes. He kept staring blankly at the door, no movement whatsoever. He then finally turned around and just walked away. About 20 minutes later, the cops showed up. I described everything frantically. The cops basically state that there's a guy in my town who has schizophrenia and is going through late-stage Alzheimer's and sometimes wanders around people's homes. Needless to say, they left and drove around until they found him and took him back to his caretakers. After that, I basically packed everything up and bolted to my father's house with the dog for the remainder of the break. If you're enjoying this video so far, please leave a like and subscribe and turn on notifications for weekly horror content. Thank you. This is an incident that occurred when I was around 9 years old. Even today, when I'm 34, I still think about what could have been. As a child, my parents both worked full-time. Sometimes they couldn't afford a babysitter when I was on winter break, so I would be home alone until either of them returned from work. There were 2 main rules. 1, never answer the door, and 2, don't play too close to the windows in case someone is watching. I was 100% guilty of hanging near the window. I liked the lighting, and I was a bored kid. No one had ever knocked on the door before while I was alone. Before my father left for work, he went over the rules one more time. Never answer the door, and don't play too close to the windows. But right after he left, I ran over to the window and began to play. After a few hours, someone knocked on the door. I froze, and I didn't answer. They knocked again. At this point in my little mind, I was thinking it might be someone I knew, because they were knocking twice, so I answered. I opened the door and there's an intimidating woman with a clipboard. She was wearing a hat with an American flag on it, very official looking to a child. She asked how old I was. I lied and said I was 12. She told me she was from some institution. Then she looked at me and said, "You're a liar. You're home alone and it's illegal. You have to come with me now. Let's go." I started crying very loudly because I'm scared to get my parents in trouble, and after all, this woman was an adult. I started crying even louder. A neighbor made a noise in our complex and the lady all of a sudden changed her mind. "Never mind, it's okay. You don't have to come with me." She then shushed me and hurried off. At the time, my parents weren't doing so well financially, so we didn't have a landline, and there were no cell phones in 1996. I couldn't call my family, and I couldn't call 911. I waited all day for my dad to come home. I'm assuming that she knew I was home alone because she had been watching me. I never really spoke on the incident because I felt like it was my fault for breaking the rules. I often think about how lucky I am that I didn't leave with her. This video has 3 disturbing true Christmas stories. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy this one too.